welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a talk through the PITrac with James Pilgrim. I'm really honored and I'm really thankful to be able to bring you this, and hopefully this sparks a bit of interest. This is a homemade launch monitor that you can essentially make yourself at home. You can 3D print these things, source all the cameras online, and you can actually build your own launch monitor. So unlike any of the homemade launch monitors where you've got to buy the launch monitor as a product, this is more a DIY launch monitor where you build it yourself. I just want to give a massive thank you to James for coming on the channel, for contacting me and actually coming on the channel and explaining all of this. I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate you reaching out to me and allowing me to kind of bring this, I'm not going to say to the golfing world, because this has been going on for about 2 years, but I guess the purpose of this is to hopefully bring more eyes and bring more attention to the product, to hopefully then get a few more people invested in this product, to build on it and to make it more accessible in the future. So massive thank you to James. Let's get right to the interview. And welcome to the channel, James. I guess you are the founder of PITrac. First off, I guess the big question, what is PITrac? How did this start? This is an open source launch monitor. How did this all start?
So this actually started a couple of years ago. And by the way, I should preface this by again saying thank you for having us on your channel. But this started a couple of years ago. I had retired a second time from teaching, and I was interested in learning about some machine vision technology, which is, how machines view the world. And I wanted to brush up on some linear algebra, which sounds nerdy, but it was just something I'd never been very good at. I wanted to get a little better at in my spare time. So I thought, well, I learn best by doing, and I picked a launch monitor as a project that I thought would be pretty difficult and probably sort of force me to learn some of these technologies. And I figured, if it was a complete failure, I'd still learn something. So that's how it began.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. And it's incredible now to see, I know that, your journey started a few years ago, but I think at the moment with launch monitors, we're really seeing a boom in homemade launch monitors, because people are smart, and what they're realizing, I think, is a lot of these companies that have these incredible launch monitors, they're priced really high. And so having something that people can make at home, or, make a bit more affordable for the market, it's just going to get better and better as the years go on.
I hope so. And the price of some of the technology is coming down, and I'm sure that's helping that as well.
Yeah, that's it. So with PITrac, I guess, what is it? It's a homemade launch monitor. Is this something you're going to sell, or how does it work?
So it is not a commercial device. It's not something we're planning to sell in a finished state. What the project is right now is it is a collection of open source software, which is freely available, and you can get it publicly from GitHub. It's a collection of that, along with some 3D printing models to actually print the enclosure that comprises the launch monitor. And then finally, it is some open source hardware design. So circuits and printed circuit board layouts that you can send to any printed circuit board manufacturer, have them create that for you. Or for that matter, you could, in theory, just build your own board. So it's a collection of these three things, the hardware and the software and 3D modeling, that allows you, along with the documentation we have, to hopefully buy the parts that you need from wherever you might be in the world. We have a parts list that is fairly generic. And then using the documentation, put it together yourself and start using it.
That's incredible. So essentially what you're talking about is an open source launch monitor that you're going to get all of the information and things you need online to essentially build your own launch monitor at home.
Just so. And there are a number of people doing that right now. In fact, there's a couple of other launch monitors that have been built and that people are testing. And we hope, as we refine the design and work the bugs out of the system, that the process of doing that will become easier and easier, and also hopefully less expensive.
That's incredible. So people making their own launch monitor, I guess, what are people up for? What is the costs? Like, say if I wanted to do this, I'd go to, I'm sure I'll have linked in the description all of the places to source these things, and I'll link your website. But say if I wanted to build this right now for myself, what are we looking at for cost?
Probably around, it depends where you live in the world and who you can order from, probably around $450. That includes a couple of cameras, a some LED lighting, some of which we use as a strobe light to capture the golf ball images. And it would also include a couple of very small microcomputers called Raspberry Pi
Yeah.
computers. And we're actually at the point now where we're hoping to be able to get the system to work with just two cameras and one Raspberry Pi. If we can do that, I'm hoping the price will be around $350 or so. And, you know, again,
Wow.
we're trying to bring that price down by taking some of the circuits and putting them all on one board, and also trying to make the software smarter so that you don't need two separate computers, you just need one.
Yeah. Wow.
And you know, of course, you're going to need some time and a soldering gun and
Yeah.
you know, a little willingness to learn some of the software involved and learn how to install it. But that's, you know, for a lot of the folks who are building these PITracs right now, that is kind of part of the adventure.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of people that I've talked to are actually really enjoying just working their way through some of the technologies that the system uses right now. And we've been very fortunate. We're using mostly technologies that are, you know, really quite current. And so it's kind of nice, even for some people who are older engineers, to kind of come back in now and have this as a project. And so, you know, we think it's quite fun to build. I mean, that was the reason that we started this project in the first place.
Yeah.
But hopefully it'll become easier and easier to do that.
I guess all the prices you're talking about are US dollars. So
I'm
450.
sorry, that's absolutely right. Yeah, and in
Yep.
some
Yep.
places it might be a little cheaper. Some places probably a little more expensive. It's funny. One of the things that this has taught me, being in the U.S.,
Yeah.
is just, you know, recognizing the differences in availability of even fairly common electronic parts.
Yeah.
You'll laugh, but our original parts list, and still to an extent today, was mostly links to Amazon, which, you know, is great if you're in South America or North
Yeah.
America, perhaps, but not so good for people who are closer to, you know, to other sources of supply.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've so many questions. I got so many questions. I guess first off, how hard is it? Like, is it something that your everyday person could go and build, or do you need to know a bit about, you know, how to build these things? Do you have YouTube videos showing how to build these things? Like,
Yeah, that's a great question. That's actually something that several of the contributors on who are working on projects right now really wanted me to emphasize, and that's
yeah,
that at this stage, where, you know, the product is still, or the project, sorry, is still fairly immature. Uh, this isn't sort of a everyday project for folks. I mean, this is a project where
yeah,
there are still a lot of rough edges.
mm,
There's you know, issues in the documentation where we didn't explain something very well. We actually don't have any YouTube videos yet, but there's a couple of people interested in producing them.
yeah,
I'd love to see, for instance, a real detailed video showing how the whole structure is assembled, but we don't have
yeah,
that yet. We have, you know, a lot of pictures in our documentation, but this is something for folks, at least right now, who are, you know, pretty technical. For instance, one of the hardest things in the entire project is actually taking a commercial camera and
mm,
unsoldering a small part in that camera to make it work in the context that we want it to work in. And, you know, it's very small soldering. It's not the kind of thing that most people do. We're in contact with the manufacturer. We're asking, hey, is this something that we could just have a little jumper switch for, so people could do it more easily? And also, there's a lot of software involved. I mean, it's
I can imagine.
many hours of building at this point. And I think it's, you know, I can't wait to see things get smoother as we start taking a lot of these things, which were used to be individual parts, and getting them all on a single open source printed circuit board where you can just order a board and most of this work is done. You, of course, still have
Yeah,
to do the software, but we also have people working on trying to make the software easier, where you could hit a button and most of the installation can be done for you. Right now, you kind of laugh. I mean, a lot of the software setup on these little Raspberry Pi computers is actually, you know, just you manually typing in commands.
Yeah,
which
wow.
again, a lot of people aren't used to. But
Yeah.
that's where we are right now, and we're trying to. One of our main pushes right now is to try to make it easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got so many questions. Let's still focus on the build. We'll get on to the other questions. So this is something you could do right now. So I could go and build this right now for, that rough estimation of 450 US dollars. What's the time frame? So if I was to say I didn't have any launch monitors, I didn't have, I've never soldered anything before, what kind of time frame are you looking at? Say if you worked a 9 to 5, is it 2 weeks to build this thing? How long is it, a rough time frame?
Oh, that's a great question. That's actually not a metric I have right now.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
what I do is I say, it learning how to solder and things like that. Obviously, there's a lot of great YouTube content out there, thanks to a lot of creators that will teach some of those things. I would say once if you're a person who has used a soldering iron, is used to maybe uh, putting parts together. If you're someone who already knows how to 3D print things, which is something I've learned is not as easy as just pushing a button sometimes.
no, yeah,
If you have sort of those basic skills, I would have to guess that it would still be, I don't know, maybe 40 hours of
okay,
work. That's kind of rough. But so, it's a fair amount of work. The great thing is though, is that we have a community that's being built right now where I love this. This is probably my favorite part of the project. We
yeah,
have people who are reaching out and saying, "Hey, I had this one part. It didn't seem to fit into this other part, and I can't figure out, am I doing something wrong, or what's going on?" And we have people now who are getting online pretty consistently and saying, "Oh yeah, I had that same problem. Actually, we need to fix the documentation.
yeah,
Here's how it works." But there's still a lot of this. One of the hardest things for me actually was to try to figure out uh, how close to being complete did it need to be before I pushed out into the public and before the group of us started working on it together.
yeah,
And as it turned out, I think it probably would have never gone out, and until a few people said, "Look, just push it out there in whatever shape it's in, and we're going to make it better." That's what open source communities do. And so I'm glad we've done it, but there's definitely a lot of places where people are still sort of like struggling about how does this work, or, oh, I tried to solder this and instead of soldering it, I burned off this wire, and how do I repair that? Um, but people have been just great about helping each other.
yeah. And I was going to say this question to the end, but I guess it kind of fits in now. How could someone get
Sure.
involved? Say if someone's listening and they go, "Hey, I'm, know a streamlined way to get this code entered into the Raspberry Pi." How could someone get involved? How do they contact you to help?
So the jumping off point probably is PITrac.org, PITRAC.org. That actually currently redirects to our main project page on a website called Hackaday. And although it has the word hack in it, it's not a hacking website. It's just a website for people who are tinkerers who build like neat things.
Mm,
Hopefully, one of which is this. And if you go there, there are links to uh, our Discord channel, to the GitHub repository. A GitHub repository is basically the holding place for all of the software and the 3D modeling files and the hardware files. And it also has some links to our PITrac YouTube video, which doesn't have a whole lot of videos now, but most importantly does have links to some of these other resources where people who are building PITracs are helping one another. The main thing probably right now is to get into the Discord server
mm.
and start looking around. You can get a sense of the community. You can get a sense for who's doing what and kind of where things are and what are the things that we're working on right now. So just PITrac.org, and that's a great place to start. Otherwise, obviously, if you're on Discord, just DMing me at James Pilgrim works fine. It's JAMES_PILGRIM. So any of those ways should get folks to us.
Yeah, nice, fantastic. And
Yeah, we,
link all these, and I'll put up on screen the links so everyone can see them on the screen. And that's kind of that Hackaday is how I found out about PITrac. So I found out about you. I'm going to say it was probably about 6 months ago now, when I was just doing some research on other launch monitors, and I stumbled across it and didn't think anything of it until you contacted me. But yeah, so there's so many questions. But before we kind of go on the journey, you're going to take us on the journey. We'll show that off in a second. Why are you doing this for free? What's the catch? What's going on?
So uh, there's no catch. The myself and some of the other people who are sort of the core contributors right now, we all believe in open source. Most of us are people who started doing software. I got my first computer. I actually built my first computer when I was about 12 years old, long time ago, as you can tell from the gray beard. And at that time, like most software was just shared amongst hobbyists. And it was just this wonderful ecosystem, and that still exists today in the open source community. My belief in open source is that you end up with software that is generally more innovative because you have more people and more diverse opinions sort of working on that software. It's software that is completely transparent, which is nice because, with something like a launch monitor, it's a little hard sometimes, I think, to kind of tell, like, really how accurate is this system or that system? How precise are they? And the nice thing about having open source is that people can sort of open the hood, or I'm sorry, like, open the bonnet. Is that the
Yeah.
more correct way of saying it? They can
Yeah.
open the bonnet. The bonnet isn't welded shut. You can open it up. You can look at the engine. You can tear it apart. And you can critique it, and you can look at things like, well, if we have cameras that are relatively inexpensive cameras like we're using with relatively limited resolution, well, even theoretically, how accurate could it be given that
Yeah.
there's only so many pixels on the screen? And I love that sense of transparency because there's so many smart people in the world, and it's great that they can all sort of pile on in whatever particular area they feel like contributing. They can do that. And there's plenty of it, and this doesn't necessarily mean that there couldn't be a commercially sold PITrac at some point. There's plenty of examples, including some of the software I'm using right now, which is the OBS software. Plenty of great examples of open source software like OBS, like Linux, for instance, or for better, for worse, the Bitcoin platform and BitChain technology. I mean, that's all open source, and I just think it's a great way of doing this. And we're relying on some open source software within our project, some of the image processing, the low level functions, and so it's just people building on top of other people's work. And having been in the commercial world for a long time in my life, it's just such a different dynamic, and the way that people interact with each other, it's just it's really positive.
Yeah, no, that is cool. And like one of the things that I love about my YouTube channel is the community that I've created. I've got the Facebook group, and like you said, the community is everything. It really means a lot to have that community and have that strong sense of community where everyone's just helping and trying to help each other out.
I love that. It's just one of the best things. I'm glad you've had that experience too.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's go. I've got more questions, but do you want to start the journey now? Do you want to take us through
Sure.
and just take us on the journey where this started and where it's at now?
I mean, I love talking about this, and I'm sure my wife is sitting downstairs right now thinking, oh, I'm so glad he has someone else to talk to about it tonight, because she ends up hearing an
Yeah.
awful lot about this project, as patient as she is. So, so the journey started again. This was just sort of a challenge. It was just a project that seemed very difficult given the speed of the objects that were moving. No one had done an open source version of this yet, although I'd heard some people and some really smart people talking about it. And it was at that point just sort of like, well, I don't know, let's see what we can do. And it started out in a pretty rough way. At first, it was literally just pieces of cardboard taped together on a table. In fact, on the same table that is in front of me right now. In fact, if you look, you can see probably some of these lines on the table, angles, trying to see if we could get this to work at all. And then shortly thereafter, we we ended up with this. There's some pictures of this on the Hackaday website, which also has a blog, which is kind of funny actually looking back into it, just to see how sort of,
Yeah.
admittedly amateurish it was at first. This is 2x4s, Velcro tape, some little bit of plywood, and some aluminum mounts for the cameras.
Wow.
And I mean, that's where it started, but it started working, and that was great. And then as we realized that, this is something I think people would really be interested in, and it's something that might be compelling for other folks as well, uh, we then came up with this. Is this, I should probably take out this. It's kind of reflective. We call this a shank shield, which if you've ever seen me golf, you know exactly what I mean. Can you see this pretty well?
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Okay. So this was the first sort of real enclosure that tried to make it look a little more put together. And, the idea was to bundle all the electronics in one place and have enough room to use just off-the-shelf power adapters. The kind of adapter that your computer plugs into the wall with. Those are stored in here. None of this is specialized hardware. This is just stuff you can get online, and relatively inexpensive stuff at that, as far as it goes. For instance, the cameras are about 40 something dollars a piece right now.
Wow.
And
Okay, that's a
yeah,
lot cheaper than I thought they'd be.
these are pretty low end cameras, and that was one of the other challenges initially was, uh, how do we build something that's relatively accurate, that doesn't rely on really fast frame rate cameras, and
Yeah.
cameras that have very short shutter speeds that can capture a moving ball very quickly.
Yeah.
And that was, purposely kind of a challenge that we knew was going to be a challenge. But the reason for doing it was A, to keep the price down, and B, because having worked in a lot of different electronic industries, including radar, it's my belief that if you have the right software, you can get around a lot of cheap hardware. And so
Yeah.
that
Okay.
was one of the things that we're really focused on here, is what can we do with cheap hardware that will still keep the accuracy up to the point where it's a usable device. And so this
Yeah.
was the first of the sort of more professional looking devices here, with the two cameras and a strobe. And there's a couple of Raspberry Pi computers in here, which is the homage of PITrac is partially to Pi computers, because I love them and they're just wonderful computers, and also, of course, a little homage to the math that's involved. In
Yeah.
fact, you can see here that pi, it's actually a pi symbol, uh, with a little coloring to differentiate the T, or what could be perceived as a T, of PITrac.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was the next stage. Now, because we've got some great contributors and a whole lot of people who are a whole lot smarter than I am, we have folks who are designing much smaller circuitry, people who have some great ideas about the optics and how to decrease the size. And so this is the current new, really, PITrac enclosure.
Yeah.
And it
Wow.
still has cameras and a strobe. Down here is some lighting that just lights up the ball when it's teed up. And, it's starting to look a little more professional. We'll have an actual plug-in sort of one single power cord instead of a whole bunch of power cords and adapters, and a much stronger shank shield, because someone who I won't mention has completely destroyed a couple of them already.
Yeah.
So we're trying to make this as rugged and reliable and me-proof as possible. Also, this will be just obviously easier to carry. It'll take less power and hopefully be less expensive. So that's sort of the arc of where we've been right now, and things are really
Yeah.
starting to
Wow.
pick up, because we've got some really sharp people who are willing to dig in and kind of get down into the details, and that is not everyone, and I totally get that. This is, like I said,
Yeah.
not the kind of thing where just anyone would work on it right now, but we're headed in that direction with the help of the contributors who are active right now. Hopefully we'll get to the point where, for instance, printing this will be pretty easy. And there's actually some people already we have one person in Europe who said, hey, I'd be happy to act as a source of the enclosure,
Yeah.
if people don't have their own 3D printer, I could probably do it pretty economically. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah, wow.
And so, that's where we are right now. We've got a number of things we're trying to do right now. One of the most embarrassing ones is it doesn't really work for left-handed golfers, so we're working on that. We're working on trying to make the system. Yeah, I mean, it's really not okay, and it's a little embarrassing, but it just wasn't a focus at first, and I didn't have any golfing friends who were left-handed. So we do have some friends now who are left-handed and who have volunteered to help out. So things like that. Putting is pretty dodgy. I mean, it works kind of most of the time. We're trying to improve that. We're trying to reduce the sensitivity to interior lighting conditions. I don't know if this will ever be an outdoor.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be an outdoor launch monitor like some of the ones you featured on your channel. We're going to have to sort of see, like, how the sun interacts with the strobe and things like that. Right now, it's really more of an indoor simulator, but that's something we thought about. And then really just improving the documentation, making it easier to build is what we're focused on.
What are just for my own curiosity, the camera FPS, what kind of frames per second are you working with those $40 cameras?
That was a huge problem. They just don't go fast enough.
Yeah.
We developed some techniques with some really great help from the people online to be able to crop the camera down so that once we located the ball in the scene, as far as the teed up ball, we could crop the camera down so it was just looking at that ball. And if we kept it like maybe 100 pixels by 100 pixels, we can do about 500-600 frames per second. Which is fast enough to notice that, when you hit the ball, it's fast enough that the ball hasn't flown too far by the time the system says, oh, the ball's been hit, we better do something. The really hard part, though, is how do you get a 160-mile-an-hour ball? How do you get a number of images? And so what we ended up doing is using a strobe-based system. So we actually don't worry about the frame rate or the shutter speed of the camera. We're like, it's a $40-some camera. We just open up the shutter. We have an infrared filter so it can only see infrared light. And then the strobe, very quickly, we can strobe at many thousands of effective frames per second. The strobe it's actually a hijacked data signal that we use to drive the strobe, and it's a very high-speed data signal. And so you can get really incredibly fast strobes to the point where I can show you something on the screen here. So the question you asked just a moment ago was, what sort of frame rates can you get with these inexpensive cameras?
Yeah.
And the answer is, well, it's certainly full screen. If you're looking at a full screen, full resolution type of thing, you can do maybe 30 frames a second. And of course, in a 30th of a second, a golf ball has already traveled from one side corner of the screen to the other, and it's gone. So what we've done is we have an infrared strobe that can put out very brief flashes of light and can do so very quickly. And so what we do is we just open up the shutter, which can't be opened or closed very quickly. We go ahead, just open it up, and we pulse light as the ball flies by. And because of how fast those pulses can be realized, we can get many, many thousands of effective frames per second. And the great thing about this is it means that one of our design goals, which is we want to be able to see a 100-meter-per-second ball, which is nothing near what I could possibly hit, but some people can. We want to be able to see very fast balls, and we wanted to see them in very, very sharp contrast, because one of the main goals of the project from a golfing perspective was to provide really good spin determination and very accurate spin determination. So we needed very sharp images of the balls. And hopefully you can see even from these early images that the images of the ball are really quite sharp and crisp, and you can see the individual dimples, which is actually how we're calculating the spin, is by the movement of the dimple pattern.
So you are dimple tracking. You're dimple tracking. You don't need logos on the golf ball.
That's right. Logos can help sometimes, but the main goal here with the particular type of processing we're doing is that we take the idea, which wasn't our idea, it's actually some Japanese researchers. They realized that the dimple pattern is sufficiently sort of unique. It's not a perfectly regular pattern. It's sufficiently unique such that even if the ball rotates, let's say, I don't know, 130 degrees, you can
Yeah,
still realize which angle the ball went because you'll be able to figure out a good angle where that same dimple pattern is uh, is what you see after you rotate the ball. So the dimple
yeah,
pattern, it's like a fingerprint, and it's very
yeah,
unique. And as you move the fingerprint, we can see like really really large angular changes pretty accurately. And in fact, one of the things, if you move on to the next page, I'm actually going to just send you one more image. I'll give you an example of
yeah,
what how we know that the spin analysis is working well. So I'm sending to you right now a little sanity check that happens every single time PITrac analyzes the spin speed. What it does is it figures out, it looks at the original ball, and in this case we're using a ball with a pattern just because it's easier for us humans to sort of distinguish where the ball is in space. It takes the original picture, it looks at a second picture of the same ball at some fixed amount of time, maybe a millisecond or something later, and then it tries to determine what angles in three axes you would need to rotate the original ball to make it look like the second ball. And of course, if we get it
okay,
right, we should be able to take that first ball and rotate it with the determined angles, and it should look exactly or very close to what the second ball looks like. And that's what you're seeing here on the screen that I just sent you is
yep,
a comparison. There's the first ball on the left. There's the ball that the second ball image that we're trying to figure out what we need to do to the first ball in order to get to that second image. And then the third is the result of actually taking the result of that analysis and transforming the first ball to where we think it ought to be. And as you can tell, the second and the third images are really close. And what that means is that the angle, the rotational angles that the system has calculated are pretty good. Because
yeah,
when you take those angles, you end up with the second ball. Does it, if that makes sense?
yeah,
Uh, this is sort of a sanity check. If you're doing it right, if you apply the angles you came up with, the rotational angles, and you get the second ball image.
yeah,
If that's the case, all you need to do is say, okay, well, the ball rotated in that number of degrees in, half a millisecond or a millisecond or whatever it is, and now you have ball spin velocity or spin speed really in three axes.
yeah,
Uh,
wow.
and I got so excited about showing you this, Joe. Now I forgot what the original question was.
Yeah, no, I guess, well, look, let's talk. I guess this is a good segue onto accuracy. I think that's what a lot of people are going to be concerned about. Like, yes,
Sure.
they're going to get this potentially, build it themselves. How accurate is this device? I'm assuming it's only going to get more accurate as work continues, but how
I sure
accurate
hope
is it
so.
right now?
I really hope that's the case.
Yeah,
Uh, so uh, we're doing accuracy in a few different ways. One way, of course, is we can take a static ball and we can put it somewhere in space, and we can ask the unit, where is this ball? Where do you think this ball is? It's this many centimeters up, it's this many centimeters out. And if it
yeah,
does a good job at that, and you have two such balls, or maybe three or four images, and you can figure out where those balls are accurately, well, then the system, it's pretty easy geometry to figure out, what the actual horizontal launch angle is and vertical launch angle and things like that. So that's one thing we've done. But the second thing we're doing is we have access to a really good commercial launch monitor. It's a uniquer in this case, an overhead, one of the
yeah,
nicer overhead ones.
yeah,
And we've been able to get PITrac to work and measure what it needs to measure. At the same time, the commercial launch monitor is making its measurements.
yeah,
So
wow,
we have a simulator now set up, thanks to the generosity of one of the local Elks Lodges here, where we have the overhead commercial system putting out data for each shot, and then we have PITrac putting out its data for each shot.
Mm.
And we can compare those two and figure out, well, how close are we?
Yeah.
Now, with the kind of cameras we're using right now, I would be surprised really if the accuracy was ever as good as a really high-end system. I mean, they have cameras with much higher resolution. There's a much finer degree of resolving where in space a ball is, and that's naturally going to help with accuracy.
Yeah.
But we do think that, at least based on our comparisons so far, that we're already pretty close most of the time, and I think we're going to be able to get closer. And hopefully in the future, we will even have a slightly more expensive variants where perhaps you might be willing to buy 3 or 4 cameras
Yep.
and do
That was one of my
stereoscopic vision.
questions. Mm.
Yeah, once we have this working with just a single camera watching the ball, if we can get 2 cameras watching the ball, like a lot of the very
Yep.
high-end systems do, then we ought to be able to increase accuracy tremendously at that point. But even right now, we've found some pretty good comparisons, and
Okay.
obviously there's some differences. And my guess, frankly, is that the error is probably all on PITrac's side. I mean, this is a commercial launch monitor that a lot of people use, and a lot of smart people have helped develop. My guess is we're assuming that the high-end commercial launch products are sort of the real truth, if you will, as to what the ball did. And
Yeah.
we're just trying to see how close we can come to what we assume is the right answer. And, depending on the shot and the angle, we're often within less than a single mile an hour in terms of speed. Vertical launch angles are usually pretty close. Horizontal launch angles, as you can see if you can bring up this little project log or a little further out. But we're getting good spin comparisons, and it's assuming that the commercial launch monitor is working pretty well, which I think is fair.
Yeah.
When we can see the same shot and get very close to the same data, that's kind of how we're determining accuracy. And obviously, this is, make no mistake, this is not where we want to be yet. A couple of almost over a degree of horizontal launch angle can still produce a pretty significant difference, several yards, in a golf simulator.
Yeah.
But at least we have a way of doing this. Actually, Joe, the funny thing is that the hardest part of this has been that when you have 2 photometric strobing launch monitors, it's like
Yes.
2 people flashing flashlights in the room, and it's a little hard to tell whose flashlight is going off. And in fact, if you scroll down a little bit in the blog entry from last July, you can see some of the problems we're having, where we're getting sort of ghost images from the commercial launch monitor. That in some
Yeah.
cases, PITrac is struggling to realize, no, that's just a ghost image. It's a partial ball imprint. It's not the actual ball. So we've actually
Yeah.
spent a fair amount of time trying to get PITrac to work better with the commercial launch monitor, not because that's really the end use case, but just because it's sort of the one way that we can show to people, hey, this actually works. And it's a way of
Yeah.
showing folks, and here's how far off we are, because I think it's really important for us to be absolutely transparent about, what PITrac's good at and where it's still struggling. For instance, with horizontal launch angle with a single camera, that's a shortcoming right now. But
Yeah.
it's getting better, and hopefully in time, I would love to see like a full 18 holes played with a great commercial launch monitor and with our very inexpensive launch monitor, and really give people
Yeah.
how far off is it? Uh,
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's what I've been doing this launch monitor testing now for a few years, and that's kind of what this channel started doing. And
yeah,
I've learned
yeah,
so much about interference with units, and I'm now very aware that people like watching a comparison, a side-by-side comparison, but I just always say now that interference is a real thing, and so I like to use units individually, do side-by-side comparisons, and use units for like a month to really get an idea and a good feel of what the unit's like before I then give my conclusion on whether something's accurate or not.
it takes a level of sophistication to realize just like you just said, some of the complexities here and the way that things can interfere. We started out thinking this would be the easiest thing in the world. Found out very quickly that it was a huge challenge. I think it's one that we're mostly overcoming now, but I really appreciate that you're sensitive to some of these challenges, because it's been a learning curve for us. It's really satisfying to see, you know, a $40-something camera taking pictures like this and being able to still come up with a pretty accurate depiction. We also have a couple of videos on YouTube where I actually take the two shots, the two sets of shot data, and we have a way of injecting those into the golf simulators that we connect to, and actually seeing where the ball showed up with the good commercial launch monitor and the less expensive PITrac monitor. And, you know, sometimes it's a handful of yards. That could be a lot for some people, but, you know, maybe in a 200-yard drive, it's not maybe that much.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something to be aware of as well is, I guess when I'm doing launch monitor testing, I'm worried about the raw metrics. I'm not worried about the algorithm based on the software because, I mean, theoretically, you could get it connected to GS Pro, and I'm not sure whether PITrac connects to GS Pro, but you connect something to a separate software, and whatever software you use, it's going to have its own algorithm. As long as those raw metrics are good, then yeah, the software itself, they're all going to have their own different algorithms.
Yeah, although it's great. So one of the things we designed into PyTrack recently, which I don't know if anyone else does, is we can actually send the shots to more than one simulator or even multiple copies of the same simulator at the same time.
That's cool.
So, and I don't know where that's going to be useful, but I think it would be useful in a situation where I would like to be able to have two adjacent simulator bins or pods or bays, I guess, and have one showing GS Pro or True Golf, let's say, with the high-end commercial launch monitor, and the other one showing with ours. So you could literally, if we had the camera far back enough, we could literally see the same shot using the same physics, because it's the same golf simulator, and see where they end up. And by the way, just to if I can, the two launch monitors that we currently, the two golf simulators that we currently connect with and interact with are GS Pro and True Golf. GS Pro, they've both been tested. GS Pro works right now today. True Golf, I just heard from the folks there who've been very helpful. They said that the version of True Golf that will have a PyTrack interface option connection should be out this month.
Okay,
in April. We've been testing it, but you know, the commercial version of True Golf with the PyTrack connection should be out this month. And man, I got to tell you, just, you know, you're talking about community. I love the fact that for a little project like this from a bunch of people that no one's ever heard of, who are basically amateurs, for folks like True Golf and GS Pro to support us. And in some cases, they've even had to modify their software a little bit to work better with ours, has just been such a gift. It's just really compelling to see them helping us out like that. And it's just been great, you know, from the first day we started seeing shots actually going in a commercial simulator driven by PyTrack.
That's really cool. Yeah. One thing I forgot to ask you as well, this is doing ball data. Is it doing club data as well, or is club data something in the future that you're planning on doing?
So club data is not supported for the most part. Now, if you're in GS Pro and you select a putter, PyTrack will switch to putting mode, which involves a slower strobing and some other changes. But it doesn't really do anything with the knowledge that you might be using a 7-iron versus a driver or something like that. So that's a ways off in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Nice. And you mentioned putting wasn't the best it could be at the moment. Obviously, with these simulators now, putting, for me, I really enjoy putting on a simulator, and I really believe you can work on your game and your putting on a simulator. So is the putting mode something that you're looking to really improve?
It is, and we're actually, I mean, it's really dodgy right now. Like, I wouldn't represent to anyone that you're likely to get a very accurate read on your putting, except occasionally. We're actually thinking about redoing it. Several people have had some ideas, redoing the putting entirely, to not even involve strobes, maybe to use both of the cameras, the one that we normally use to sense, a hit, maybe
Yeah.
using that and the strobe camera at the same time stereoscopically. So yeah, that's really something that's a little ways out. I mean, the mathematics for this is not difficult. We just need to figure out how can we do accurate putting uh, using this system with these cameras.
Yeah.
And I never blame the hardware, Joe. It's like it's a $40 camera. It's doing great for a $40 camera. If we're not getting the results we want, that's on us, right? It's the software needs to improve to better use those cameras. And at some point, I hope we'll be able to do that soon.
I love the idea. You briefly touched on it of having, say, a premium version. So getting more expensive cameras if you want. I guess that's going to be down the line. But that really excites me as well because then, depending on your budget, you can invest a little bit more and potentially get something that's a bit more accurate.
Yeah, that would be great. Like for instance, even just getting two cameras watching the ball flight at the same time would improve the horizontal launch angle precision tremendously. And in
Yeah.
theory, if we have cameras that are relatively high resolution, I would hope we would be, pretty close to some of the commercial launch monitors.
Yeah, see, that's exciting. That's really exciting. I've got one more question for you. I'd obviously love to get one of these on the channel when you are ready, when you're happy. Is that something that potentially we can do down the line?
Absolutely. I can't wait to have things stable enough and reliable enough that we could ship you, hopefully something that looks, a fair amount like this.
Yeah,
That for instance, the video you did with Brett with G&G, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. The ability to like do 9 holes with
yeah,
you would be super exciting. And by the way, I have to say, Brett, with his project, I know he's going in a slightly different direction commercially, perhaps, but boy, it's just really inspiring to see how that project has progressed in the last 6 months to the point where you guys can play holes together.
yeah,
So I look forward to that. I don't know, how many months down the line that's going to be for us. In part, it kind of depends on how many contributors we can get at this point. And we're hoping actually being on your channel is something that might get some more people excited, and especially the people who would be willing to put in either some technical contributions. Because
yeah,
there is sort of a thin intersection between golfers and between people who like picking up a soldering iron.
yeah.
The people in that admittedly somewhat small intersection, if we can get a few more of those to help out on this project, that would be great. And of course, the other thing we're looking for now is we're starting to build more devices. We'd only built a couple of these things. Now that we're trying to use different lenses and different form factors, and we're starting to
Yeah.
build, very high-end printed circuit boards, we're hoping to get some people interested in providing a little financial support for the
Mm.
project as well. We've already had a number of people who have put in some donations, and we're super duper appreciative of that. Hopefully we can get a little bit more of that. This isn't a super expensive project, but it gets up when you're buying these little computers and some of these cameras, it gets into the thousands of dollars pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So
So have you got a link or is that on your website? Will people be able to find where to donate if they want to donate to this project?
yeah, so thank you. Yes to both questions. If you look on the main project page in Hackaday, or if you go to Discord, there is a financial support channel on the Discord
Yeah.
server, or even in the YouTube. If you look at the main YouTube channel information, there's a wish list, which because a lot of us are based in the U.S. is on Amazon,
Yep.
where if you could buy a camera or a camera lens or whatever, that would be great. And we also have a Ko-Fi, Ko apostrophe Fi. Some people
Yep.
may have heard of that. Ko-Fi is a contribution site. Originally, it was supposed to be, buy me a cup of coffee if you appreciate the software. For
Yeah.
us, we can use a little more than a cup of coffee, but it's ko fi.com/PITrac, and people can make contributions there.
Nice.
And
Again,
all the
I'll
money
try and
we
link
have
that.
goes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, well, thank you. We'd appreciate that. Hopefully, there's some well-to-do person who's got money burning a hole in their pocket, and they think, ah, yeah, this would be a neat project to support.
Yeah, definitely. That is all amazing. Thanks so much, James, for coming on the channel, for sharing that, for going through everything and just being so open with the project. I think a lot of people who watch my channel will be really, really interested in this. So I hope this video gets the attention that it needs. And like I said, there'll be a million links in the description with all of the information that you guys need to find anything. So yeah, massive thank you for coming on the channel, James, and sharing everything.
Thank you. You have a great rest of your day, and this was really fun. So I appreciate it. We all appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully in the future, we'll potentially do another video where I've got a unit and you can be on the channel as well. And we can just talk through and we can hit some shots. That'd be cool.
That would be great. Although I may get a proxy stand-in for me because my golf game is just
Yeah.
so embarrassing.
Yeah.
But we'll figure out something. I appreciate the offer, and I look forward to it.
Okay, so that is the PITrac. There's just so many questions. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions about this device. Definitely reach out to James if you're interested. This is something that you can build today at home for yourself. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you've got any comments or questions for me, leave them down below and I'll catch you guys in the next one.